You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcast. I have Mary Jo Rapini. She's a psychotherapist specializing in intimacy, sex, and relationships. She has a private practice in Houston, Texas, and she's a renowned lecturer, author, and TV personality. She's been on many different shows talking about her work. So, Mary Jo, thanks for coming. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Oh, good. So within the realm of sex and relationships, do you focus just on intimacy and relationships, or people that have problems with intimacy? Like, what's the focus of your work?
Both, actually. I have a partner at Baylor College of Medicine, and he heads up the sexual dysfunction unit at Baylor. He's a urologist, and so we deal with anything from, personal people that have just, individuals that have problems with their sexuality, or couples who basically have been married for a long time and are, in a stage where their emotional capacity to love each other has been deteriorated, whether it's through resentment or just loss of touch or neglect or something physical. So I really do the whole gambit. I'm a pretty avid writer, so a lot of my clients come in from different cities other than the Houston metro area. They come in from New York, or I just had something published in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. I was a contributor for an article about the importance for some people to sleep in separate beds if they're going to keep their marriage together and happy. And so things like that bring me new clients, and it just continues to generate like that.
Okay. What are some of the major issues that you run into, let's say, within a marriage? And we'll start with that.
I think the most important thing is that a lot of people want a quick fix. One day they kind of wake up and they're in this relationship and they haven't been paying attention a lot, or they've been distracted with work or their phones or their, whatever they do on the weekends, maybe kids. And they wake up and they realize, I haven't been happy for a long time. What's going on? And their immediate thought or cure is to go to a physician and maybe get some pills, try some stuff. And the problem is that pills work for some people, but they don't work for everyone. And if you've not been dealing with what you're feeling in a relationship, whether you have leftover grief, or let's say you got a divorce and you had guilt about it, or just felt really emotionally beat up from it, those sorts of things can add to feelings of hostility, depression, resentment, and anger. And it doesn't matter what kind of pills your doctor gives you. If you're in a relationship with someone, you're not going to be able to perform, and you're not going to be able to be happy. In your life, something's missing. And I think my job as a sex therapist is mostly helping people understand that how you feel about things is very important, and it absolutely affects your physical health as well.
again, what are some issues? Just waking up unhappy? I mean, what's the procedure from there?
Well,
If
I
you're
think
taking
like
pills,
resentment.
I can see why that wouldn't help. But what do you do? What is a better way?
Well, if you have feelings of resentment or affairs, or someone betrayed you with money, or someone, you're dating and you're not able to connect with other people, or you know, basically you have a bad self-concept, you don't like your body, you don't like the way you're aging. These are all scenarios of what brings people to therapy. I think the number one thing is they're married and they feel like they're not happy being married. There's a false assumption that marriage is supposed to make you happy, and that is totally a myth. What makes you happy is you wanting to serve your partner and getting married for the right reasons. It's not about when you get married what your partner can bring to you. It's, are you willing to grow? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to change the way you are to become a better version? Marriage is a lifestyle that basically helps people grow. It was never designed to make people happy. That's why it's important that you're emotionally mature before you undertake marriage. If you aren't ready for that sort of commitment and that sort of steadiness and being willing to work out issues instead of just quitting or giving up, then you shouldn't get married.
So do you do personal counseling, or do you have like a set of recommendations you give to people in some format? Like, what's the way you do it?
I do personal counseling, and I use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't know how many therapists you've talked to, probably not a real lot, because in the world of technology, it might not be as important. But in counseling, basically what works the best for the couple depends on the issue at hand. I see individuals, but the majority of my work, since individuals in and of themselves, no matter how unhappy they are, they're searching for somebody else. And so it usually involves couples, because even if you're unhappy, you usually can find a partner who you will thus probably make up even more unhappy until you get your stuff together. And it essentially comes back to what's going on with you. I do prescribe homework. I have homework on my website. I have a vibrant and growing YouTube station that's completely free. People can subscribe to it. And on that station, you can also download homework. And the homework is designed in a way that it helps you personally, or you and your partner, become very clear about what the issues are. There's several different homeworks. There's anywhere from boundaries to emotional abuse to, getting ghosted or gaslighted or whatever is happening right now in your life. And because of the social media aspect, there's a lot more variety in the issues myself, as well as almost every psychologist or relationship therapist is seeing right now.
You mentioned being ghosted and being gaslighted. What's involved there? What have you seen happen?
Well, mostly, ghosting is just when you're the person that swears to love you and attaches to you and is very close to you, when they just disappear, without any notice. They just completely wipe out their phone. You can't contact them. If you do, they don't answer back. They just quit. And it's called ghosting. And some of the people that are ghosters go on to become haunters. And the haunters are when basically they continually check up on you. They continually look at your social media and sometimes even will like it in an effort to let you know that they're still there. But basically they just aren't responsible enough for whatever reason to, break up with you in person or to, make a decision. They're usually quite emotionally immature people. Yeah. And
Wait,
they just
are you seeing this, God forbid, are you seeing this in long-term relationships or marriages? Or are you seeing this just in like younger people that just are dating for a while?
It isn't as common in long-term relationships, mostly because the couples are so much more adept at reading each other. So it's usually when you're dating someone. The problem is that they make you feel like you're very much a part of their life. So there's some deception involved with ghosting. And I think that's the most hurtful part. And the other hurtful part is to really move on from a relationship. You need to be able to make some kind of a closure on it, or at least it's very helpful to. And so basically the ghosting aspect makes it so you can't really ever do that. And so it's sort of a backward slap in the face, but I'm not sure that that's consciously intentional along, when they do it.
It's a pretty spineless thing to do. Yeah, I'm sure you've contacted the people that have been ghosted, but what about the ghosters themselves? Have you had any of them and spoken to them and say, why'd you do that?
Well, because they are somewhat, as I have alluded to, emotionally irresponsible, they usually don't end up in therapy, because to go to therapy, you really have to be mindful, and you really have to be self-aware, and you have to be curious about why you behave the way you do, and want to change. And so right away when people say, well, I would never go to therapy, I believe them, because I can see with the way they live that that's kind of their motto. They're really not wanting to change. They're not a curious people, and they're not always educated, because when you're educated, then I think automatically what happens is you develop more self-awareness. And I'm not saying college educated. I mean just an educated mindset. In order to want to seek higher education, you almost have to be aware, self-aware of what your situation is and what you could potentially turn out to be, or what you would like to turn out to be. So I have not talked to a lot of ghosters. I think it's kind of the idea that they know it's a bad thing to do, and they would be somewhat embarrassed or shamed to admit it as well.
What is gaslighting then?
Gaslighting is when you come on so strong and you're going to do everything, you're going to take over, but they're also very controlling, and they're going to take over all right, but within their takeover, they're going to maintain total control. And it's a way for them to get inside your head. They're somewhat manipulative and many times abusive. It's not a good sign. If somebody really likes you, that's great. And, there's an appropriate way to let that person know that they really like you. But when you over flatter and, let's say that the person's mother is ill and you're offering to come to the hospital and see the person's mother with them, after you just met them, or to take food over there or something, that's just too much. It's almost like something doesn't feel right or smell right, and you should trust your gut, because gaslighters are even, I personally think, more dangerous than ghosting. I mean, ghosting's kind of a cowardly act, right? But gaslighting, you can really, these people are manipulators and they're control freaks, and if you let them into your head or your heart, they could really drag you down and make you feel worthless. Their whole motive is to make you feel less than, so they can always be superior and save you.
So what's an example of someone gaslighting someone? What does that mean? They're like I don't know. All of a sudden they're there for you and they're a big presence in your life, or does it mean that they are mad at you and they're going to destroy you and they publicly say they're going to destroy you? I mean, what happens? What's the behavior?
Gaslighters are smooth. So they basically, it's not that they're going to come across as very charming. Your friends are going to like them. They're basically in disguise. They're masqueraders. They're control freaks. They're manipulators. They are, I alluded to an example. If you meet them and they decide that you're a target and they really like you and they tell you they really like you, before you even really know them. So I would say the second date, let's say you tell them your mother is really ill and in the hospital, and they're offering to take you to the hospital to sit with your mother and maybe even to cook for you. That's overwhelming on a date, a second date, when you don't even know this person. But because there's so many lonely people in the world, they get sucked into it. They get sucked into the attention. They get sucked into the extreme generosity, and they take advantage. Like they'll say, okay, that sounds great. And that's letting a gaslighter in. That's the first step. That, okay, now the person can see more. The more control they can get of you, the more they're going to use it against you. And it's very difficult to get rid of them because they're not above throwing, like saying insults about you on social media or, just making your life hell wherever they can. So it's a good idea if when you notice, if someone approaches you and they're too much too soon, then it's a good idea to not let them in, just keep them at arm's length.
Right. Okay.
It's basically a manipulation tactic.
Right. So what are some of the recent trends you're seeing in relationships the past few years? What's new and different about how people are interacting? Or is there anything that's new and different?
Well, basically people still are looking for love, and the way they meet people almost exclusively right now is online. And I think that's a big difference in what we're seeing with couples. I think, it might have been in the past that you met someone through a friend, maybe through a friend of a friend, but that's no longer true. And so when you're dating people online, it's important that you understand the first thing they see is your photo as well as your profile. So I really caution people to be smart when you're writing a profile. Know exactly what you want from this other person. What are you looking for? Some people aren't looking for relationships. They're looking for hookups. So keep that in mind, because if you're looking for a hookup, then you're going to get a hookup. And if you're looking for a relationship, you may or may not. You're going to have to wade through a lot of people and maybe, but a lot of it depends on the picture you post. A lot of people will complain to me, well, there's no good partners out there. They all want one thing. And I say, okay, well, let's look what you posted. And they posted a very seductive picture, as well as their profile is like, it's so vague and it's open to fun and excitement. Well, that's up to whoever reads it, what fun and excitement is. So, be honest with what you want. Do you want a relationship? What does that look like to you? That gets people in a lot of trouble. I think the dating apps are the biggest thing. And I think a lot of the communication is poor right now. I think people don't know how to talk. They're very stilted in conversation. They're very uncomfortable. Words don't flow freely. And they text. And, let's face it, people have a hard time communicating eye to eye. When you text, there's bound to be a lot of misconceptions. So I'm reading more text and Facebook Lives than I ever have in my life. Pardon?
Well, all right. So is your encouragement then, let's say you meet someone online, it seems promising. What's your recommendation? Is as soon as possible, try to, I guess, at least do a video chat, or, ideally you see them in person? Or what do you do so that you don't get stuck in the realm of text?
Yeah, I think as soon as possible, I would make it clear how I like to communicate. If I don't want to communicate with a text, I will tell them up front. If I prefer a phone call, I tell them up front. Now, some people are afraid to do that because they're like, nobody's going to do that. Well, you take that chance. How picky are you, and how needy are you? Do you need a relationship now? If you're in a hurry and you need one quicker, you're going to have to take what you get. If you feel like there's no rush, I'd rather have quality than quantity, then slow down. I would never meet someone in person until I had talked with them at length for at least 3 months. That's my own personal goal. That's my own personal, I don't know, value. And I'm married, so I don't have to worry about that. But that's just how I feel about it. The longer you delay sex, the better, especially if you want a long-term relationship. Once sex gets into the picture, physical need and the whole idea of having sex with someone can really make a relationship look differently than it is. And if I thought this person was special enough to someday have sex with, then I would take my time waiting until I really knew this person was someone I wanted to have in my life. And that doesn't happen for, the first month, the second month. I'm not about I always tell people it's not the first date, it's not the third date, it's the date that you feel like this is a person you're probably going to want in your life. Because it is a big deal. I like it to be a big deal. I don't ever want sex to be casual. If someone reduces it to casual sex, they would not be a person that I would ever really be able to respect or, think much of.
I think it'd be funny to tell someone I only have sex by text, not in person, just to mess with them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of...
I'm just kidding. It's not possible.
Well, no, I think there's a lot of people that I work with, especially people that fly in, that is their relationships. They text someone, they find someone online they are interested in, and they text them and they set up and they have sex with them. But make no mistake, that's why they're miserable in their life. That might work for you for, a year or two, whatever. But there's going to come a point in your life where that will no longer work for you. And then switching from that to something more monogamous and maybe even sacred, they're never, it just is never as fulfilling for them because they're just not able to do it. And they end up feeling badly about themselves and the relationships are just miserable. I almost, as a therapist, just want to tell them, you guys know this isn't going to work, and I think we should just let this one go. But they want it so bad because they've lived their life alone in a very superficial, physical way. And, it just can no longer feed them or fulfill what they want in life. We can say whatever we want, but I think the more emotionally mature, or maybe the higher you get in your emotional intelligence, the majority of people want something purposeful and meaningful in their relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any, I don't know, what does a good relationship have in it versus not have in it? In terms of behaviors, communication behaviors. So does a good relationship have more phone calls versus texts in it? Does a good relationship have, preset, we're going to have dinner together X nights a week? I mean, what are some of the hallmarks of a healthy relationship, or, the behaviors that you encourage people to engage in to bolster and strengthen their relationship?
Wow, I have several videos about that on YouTube. But I think, overall, what's really important for couples is not so much how you communicate, but that you communicate, and that both partners feel good about the way they communicate. Marriage is very individualistic, and what works for one couple is not what works for another couple. So when you're talking about hallmarks, we get into trouble because people compare their relationship to other people that they know. And if it doesn't look the same and they're having a bad day, or maybe they're just kind of in a rut in their own relationship, they can concur that means there's something wrong with their relationship. But many times it's not. Sex is such a big deal in relationships, but at the same time, some of the closest marriages and relationships I've been witness to as a therapist are sexless. Well, they're intercourseless, but yet they have such an incredible emotional intimacy and closeness that they are incredibly happy. And as long as both partners feel like that's what they want in their relationship, those relationships work great. Now, if you had one person that wanted sexual intercourse and the other didn't, you'd have a problem, and that marriage would not be as good. But I can't even say that a lot of sex in the marriage is good. I do think physical intimacy is important, but that can be done through touch and through cuddling and through many other ways other than physical intercourse. And so it's expanding your mind and making sure when you communicate that you're able to talk to your partner and that they agree. If your partner doesn't agree, then it's not going to work. I think responding to each other's good news when one person shares good news, that's something I put a lot of attention to. I think that's a really good sign. That means usually that they don't compete and they're on each other's side. I think if you have thoughts about your partner when you're not with them, and the thoughts are good thoughts, like you're thinking things they said to you or happy things, that's a really good sign. If you are invested in hobbies and friends and projects away from your partner that are different than your partner, that's an awesome sign. I really like to see that because you're getting refueled and re-energized, and that means you're going to bring that interest back into your marriage. So your partner's going to continually be inspired and maybe taught and changed by what you're doing. I think both partners have to do that. It's really important. I look how couples split rules, how they split chores. If the woman is doing everything or the guy is doing everything, I don't like to see that. I know in a marriage like that, there's going to be resentment, and resentment comes out in the bedroom. And so I know eventually they're going to have problems with affection. And so I try to help clarify that for them and maybe start working on that right away. If they're both willing to try new things together, even if they don't like it, like let's say she wants to go hear a band that he doesn't, but he's like, you know what, it's the last thing I want to do, but I love you. And so, yeah, let's go. That's a really good sign. And vice versa. She should make those accommodations for him. If you have too many highs or lows in a relationship, like something's always happening and there's always there's a lot of drama, very bad sign in a relationship. Good relationships don't have that. They are pretty their peaks are much less. They go along pretty well. They have bumps, they have bad times, but they're not peaking and they're not full of drama and who said who and what said what. And I think how close they feel after arguments. How long does it take them to turn to each other and feel close, like they can actually talk about something and resolve it and say they're sorry to each other? It's a great relationship. So those are things I kind of go through in my own head, but we don't do it step by step. In therapy, I'm watching, but more than watching, I'm watching and listening. I'm looking at their eyes when they talk, because I've met some really good liars, but it's hard to lie to me if I can see your eyes, because people just do weird things with their eyes. So
yeah, well, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very, very good. Any trends that you see that are important to take note of in relationships? You mentioned, for instance, that I don't know, most people meet online. I guess I'm old enough to have been around 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where meeting online was kind of weird. If you met someone online, people kind of poke fun at you. Oh, you met someone in a chat room or something. But now I guess it seems like it's the norm. I've been out of the race for a while, but being married myself. But how often do people meet online versus more traditional, like meet in person type things?
Oh, I would say it's almost like 80% online. And Tinder
really?
seems to be the biggest online that my population works for. Like the people I see, the majority of them meet on Tinder. I don't think as many people. I think they meet. I think they still go out to events and things like that. But I don't see. Maybe that would be a good demographic to study because it might be older people who meet that way. But the majority of the millennials on down are meeting online now. And I think what online offers too is a diversity. If you meet in person, then you're going to meet more of probably like what your friends are or people you hang out with. Online, there's a big diversity, and there's a movement toward that. People want someone different. They're challenged by it. They want to try something new. So I see more of
people
that.
may be attracted to novelty. Let's say I'm Caucasian and I don't know, I want to date someone that's Asian. But
right.
When people end up in relationships, do they tend to end up with people that are pretty similar to them, or do you see like very unusual pairings work? What do you see the reality is versus what people say they want?
Well, interracial is becoming more popular. However, it still has quite a few issues with it, and it's not easy. It can be very stressful. It's interesting. People marry someone the first time you marry. This was not true for subsequent marriages, but the first time you marry someone, that person may not be like you at all, but they're within 5 points of your IQ. And so anyone who marries the first time, I know those marriages aren't always golden. However, that person is probably going to be the most like you of subsequent people. So, there's a lot of myths out there. Everybody thinks that everybody wants to marry someone like them, but I think the majority of people kind of want someone different. One of the most important things, though, that in my opinion, and maybe just because I'm pretty cerebral, as is my husband, but I think what's very important to me is their education and also how they think. I would always want to marry someone that our IQs or our abilities were similar, our thinking abilities. Because, and I say that very honestly, because in marriage, if you really want a good marriage, then you have to be the kind of person that is going to attack marriage as if, okay, we're two smart people and we brain solve well. Surely, if we end up in a problem in this marriage, we will be able to brainstorm ideas to work through it together. And that is our motto in marriage. And I've been married to the same guy since I was 20. And when we have a rough time, I always remind him, listen, we're two smart people and we have been through a lot of hills and valleys and we just have to brainstorm. And I literally get out a sheet of paper and we brainstorm solutions. And if I give my clients nothing else, I try and give them the idea that they created this marriage. And anything you can create, you can tweak it and you can change it so that it suits you better, so it fits better. Now, if there's abuse or, addictions or something like that, then you're limited with what you can change. Abuse, you have to get rid of it. You just absolutely have to end that relationship. And addiction, many times, if they're not willing to go to rehab, if they love their addiction more than they love you, then you have to end it. Because especially if you have children, you just cannot expose them to that crazy world. It's not responsible parenting.
True.
So,
very good. What I was going to ask is, what are some resources for listeners? We're kind of at the end. You've given a lot of good stuff, but how can people get in contact if they've been Tinderized and they want help with their relationship? And where do they find you?
Right. The best way is my website. It's Mary, Mary, Jo, Jo, Rapini, R like Robert, A like Apple, P like Peter, I, N like Nancy, .com. My Twitter is @MaryJoRapini. My Instagram is @MaryJoRapini. My Facebook is Mary Jo Rapini, LPC. You can watch me on Fox 26 every Monday and Thursday morning at 9:22 a.m. And Google. Just go to Google and Google my name, and everything will pop up.
We can't find you on Tinder, though. I'm just kidding, but we found you in all good, reputable places.
No, you won't see me on Tinder or anything, but I promise you that I will respond to any questions. I'm very compulsive, so I have that ability. When I see something, I can't ignore it.
Okay, well, very good. Well, Mary Jo, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.